What's going on, guys? This is John here with the Fantasy Tap, and I just wanted to say thank you so much for tuning in to today's episode. Now, obviously, as you can see, Mike isn't here with me. We are continuing these shorter YouTube videos that are also making it onto the podcast. If you got, just to get you guys some quicker, more information, and just be more available for you. So let us know how you guys are liking them. Make sure to like and subscribe to this video and to the channel, as well as turning those post notifications on so you can make sure to check out every video that gets uploaded. So today I am here to talk about everyone's favorite position in fantasy football, the running back. Obviously, the running back position is the most heavily drafted in the early parts of the rounds because it's very likely that those running backs that you're drafting, there's not many to replace them behind them. We saw last season, if your early running back got injured, you were scouring waiver wires week in and week out, trying to pick up someone just to fill that role. And if you don't pick them up in draft time, it's a long shot that you'll be secure at that position later on in the season. So people do spend those draft picks early on them. But part of the issue with that comes with, you got to make sure you're getting your value. Now, you can be spending a top first-round pick on a running back, but are you getting first-round points out of them on a weekly basis? Could you have been better off going with a tight end in the end of the first or the beginning of the second and Travis Kelce? Or maybe one of the receivers pops off a little bit more than that running back you drafted in the fifth spot that got injured. So make sure you're looking for total value. These first and second round picks aren't ones you can just throw away on your best shot. You want to make sure you get some security and upside. Now, someone who I don't believe has the security, and realistically where he's going right now is his upside, but Antonio Gibson, currently being drafted at running back 12, ADP of 17. So we're talking end of the first, beginning of the second, about midway through the second if he falls a little bit. But he looked great in his rookie season. He finished at running back 12.5-point PPR league. And realistically, part of that came in the fact that he was one of only 14 starting running backs last season to play 14 or more games. And out of those 14 that I'm calling out, I'm including J.K. Dobbins and Mike Davis. So arguably only 12 other running backs played 14 or more, or starting running backs played 14 or more for him. And that's decent. That's security. That is some security for him. You had 14 games, you could put him in your lineup. But out of those 14 games, 5 of them, he finished with less than 10 points in a half-point league. That's not first-round material. And only 5 of those games did he finish as a top 12 running back in half-point leagues, meaning that it was more than a 50% chance that you put him in there and you weren't happy with the results you got. And at running back 12 currently in the league, that is a lot to be asking for. The Washington football team in itself, regardless of them still not having a new name, they do have a new quarterback. Ryan Fitzpatrick is there. He's played for my favorite team. He probably played for your favorite team or has at least played against them. You know who he is, and you know that his play style will be throwing the ball up in some crazy situations, possibly a lot of turnovers and loss of drives. Not very, very great for a running back who was getting less than 33% of the total pass catching work out of the running back position on their team last season. They did go out of their way to sign Curtis Samuel, who, as a receiver, got 41 rushing attempts in 2020. And with his skill set, you could see him eating into Antonio Gibson's total upside and total opportunity that he could have. Curtis Samuel's the type of guy where a simple screen pass could turn into a 30, 40-yard play, and that's 30, 40 yards less that Antonio Gibson has on one of the many drives of that game to actually produce for you. Now, I do think that he's going to finish as a very solid running back too this year, but at ADP of ADP of 17 at running back 12, you're going to be spending up way too much for him, and I really think that's really his issue right now is just the total upside that you can get for him. It's just not going to happen. Even on a 16-game stretch, Antonio Gibson was still averaging 18th most carries and rushing yards per game, as well as 16th most in carries for the season. And that's not a heavy workload in a team that's not very fantasy impactful. I think Antonio Gibson is great, but I would be much happier with some of the guys going a little bit below him. One of those guys, even being Clyde Edwards-Helaire, I think comes from a much different skill set, but could return a similar value, and you might be able to grab him about another round later, taking another shot on someone else or grabbing that high-end quarterback tight end. Moving on to our second running back, though, I've got Saquon Barkley. Currently running back 5, draft pick 5, and going extremely early unless there's a room full of haters in there. Now, the draft capital has been earned once. In his rookie season, he was running back 1 in PPR formats, and he was averaging 18.4 points per game. And that is incredible. That was obviously the running back 1. In 2018, though, he was getting 7.5 targets per game. And we already started to see a decline in those targets per game moving into 2020, where he was only getting 5.5. And that brought him down to 14.8 points per game, even in 13 games. Still 6th most points per game average for the running back position in 2019, which would have fared pretty well had he finished the season. But if you take his end of the year finish, he was about 15 points behind Ezekiel Elliott, who was number 5. But he was only 2.5 points above running back 7. And only if you take the same difference between him and Zeke, you're dropping all the way to running back 12 on a per game average, meaning that there was a tier break, an obvious tier break between Ezekiel Elliott and Saquon Barkley and below back in 2019. And I think what a lot of people are is just stuck on that rookie year and what we got from him. 2020, he was going as the running back 2 in drafts, and possibly if you were in a league where Christian McCaffrey slipped by, he was the running back 1. Definitely hurt a lot of people, and that came off of a pre-injured season. Now this year in 2021, we're coming off of another season-ending injury that we don't know what to expect from Saquon when he comes back. Yes, he's possibly one of the most talented running backs in the league at the moment, but is that opportunity going to show in fantasy formats and fantasy upside? He came into the New York Giants, saw one of the last decent years of Eli Manning, then got into Daniel Jones taking over the reins. Not very great. Even that receiving core has been dealing with trying to find some kind of life, signing Golden Tate, grabbing Sterling Shepard, or trying to find what they have with Sterling Shepard, and then drafting Darius Slayton, who looked like a nice deep threat for them in 2019, but 2020 we didn't see it either. Now we've got them with Kenny Golladay, we've got Kadarius Toney, and then even John Ross making an appearance in New York. I think we're going to be seeing Daniel Jones throwing the ball not as much to the running back, but just trying to open up the field. And then Saquon Barkley could see some great consistency, maybe at that running back position as a running back 12. I do think that he is a high-end running back, and so if he slips in drafts, I'm still grabbing him. But he doesn't give me a secure feeling, and I don't think that we're going to get a top 5 finish from him. Everything I'm seeing from them, the Giants aren't going to be a very strong run game. Currently, PFF has them ranked as a 32nd best offensive line, and then after they spent a 4th overall pick on Andrew Thomas in 2019. And then the biggest problem for me in Saquon is most important things, availability, and he's already continued to be a non-committal to being ready to start for week 1. And someone that you're taking with that first pick in the draft, your first pick in the draft, if you're drafting early, you're definitely going to want to make sure they're ready for you week 1, and you're not trying to fill a hole already. So make sure you guys really dive into Saquon Barkley and let me know what you think. I currently think that he does have the opportunity and skill set to finish as like a top 10, but 5's just not going to make it. Jumping down a little bit in the draft, we're going to go with someone who I was very hot on coming into the last season, and that was Miles Sanders. Currently, he's running back 18, ADP of 34, and that's pretty decently down there. you're talking just before the end of the third round, and more than likely your second running back on your team. Now, the biggest problem for him, in my opinion, is going to be, again, that quarterback situation. Jalen Hurts is a mobile quarterback with NFL time. His passing ability, from what we can see, has been limited. Only got 3 games in before unreasonably being benched back in week 16. I don't know if Miles Sanders has shown enough to be a bell cow back in Philadelphia with a new quarterback who's more than likely going to be taking rushing attempts from him. Then they go and sign Kerryon Johnson from the Lions, who a couple of years ago, everyone was very thrilled to see him on the field. He was drafted in 2018 in most dynasty leagues and redraft leagues as a solid running back. And due to a few injuries, just kind of fell off completely so quickly. And then you also saw the Eagles spending a little bit of their draft capital on running back Kenneth Gainwell, who, if you have done any research on him, you'll see he's an extremely talented pass catching back, sort of well-rounded in the running game, but can also fill that role as like a 5'8", 205-pound running back. He might get some blocks in. He's kind of reminds me of a CEH, but not as agile. Not a bruiser you can run up the middle, but Kerryon Johnson is. And then speaking of that, Miles Sanders' health concerns. It was very common last season that you were getting weekly reports saying that he was doubtful, and in at the last second. Doubtful, out this week, doubtful, and again. And you're not very happy seeing that week in and week out with someone that you're drafting to fill in a weekly role on your roster. Miles Sanders is going, like I said, at running back 18, and that's just before some of the guys that I like a lot more than him. That includes Chris Carson, David Montgomery. Both of those guys are guaranteed a workload, and I think that Miles Sanders is at the possibility that he's going to be losing any leading role that he has in that running back room. I think that the Eagles do give him a little bit of a chance early in the season to have a heavier workload than the other guys, but I do think that by mid to end season, we're seeing the Eagles in a full committee backfield and Miles Sanders not receiving that 180 rushing attempts on the season. And then with Jalen Hurts at quarterback, he was getting 80% of the snap percentage, and you could say that he looked very good. But if you dig deep into the numbers, you'll see he had some of his least efficient running in that time period. Rushing for over 150 yards in a game, 131 yards in a game on 13 carries, but one of those yards is 82. That leaves you 12 carries for about 50 yards, and that's just barely acceptable. Miles Sanders does have some upside, but just not enough to make it worth the draft pick. And that's what this episode's about. It's you just really want to make sure you're getting your value. And when there's other people there, why take the chance? Realistically, we could see a realm of reality where Miles Sanders is completely benched. Last season, you had 3 of his rushes, include one of those being that 82-yarder. 2 other 72-yard runs last season accounted for 26% of his total rushing yards, as well as 50% of his total touchdowns for the season. Those 3 runs could have easily been called back for a holding penalty, a block in the back, something like that. And then you see Miles Sanders easily falling down to running back 30-something by the midseason mark last year. And we wouldn't be talking about him right now. He would have fallen off completely, and we would have been moving on. So make sure you guys move on when he comes up on your ADP boards, unless he falls into like the the end of the running back 2s, the early running back 3s. At that point, you could get some value from him if he becomes a lead back and holds that role very strongly, which I just don't see happening. Finally, rounding out the running backs that I am not going to be drafting, and I'm telling you guys to avoid at their current ADPs, and it's Cam Akers. ADP at the moment's 15, making him running back 11, and I was super hot coming into this offseason for Cam Akers. As soon as Malcolm Brown left, I thought Cam Akers was going to eat into that role, and we're going to see someone who just balls out, possibly being a top 12 running back. And that's where he's being drafted right now. One of the problems, though, he's not a very competent and experienced pass catching back at the NFL level. And that's not going to be getting any better with Matt Stafford at quarterback. We do know that Matt Stafford has a big arm, and with receiving talents like Robert Woods, Cooper Kupp, and even Tyler Higbee, I think we're going to be seeing him taking a lot more shots downfield than we're used to with Jared Goff at quarterback, shortening the field for the running opportunities and those big play opportunities for those running backs. Now, he does have some upside now that Malcolm Brown is gone to the Miami Dolphins, but Darrell Henderson's still a guy there. Darrell Henderson was lining up the first 3 weeks of the season as their lead running back, getting nearly 20 touches a game until he started getting banged up week in and week out. And at that point, you started seeing a committee backfield with whichever two running backs were healthy that week getting a good share. And Henderson was still seeing about a 40% snap percentage in the games where Malcolm Brown was out and Akers was in, after Akers has taken over that more of a lead role there. And then speaking of when he started taking over, between weeks 13 and 17, Cam Akers was averaging over 20 carries per game, and which was his biggest step forward, and which is a great mark to see from your running backs, especially in fantasy. But in those weeks, he still only finished as running back 22. And if you're going to be drafting at running back 11 at the end of the first, beginning, middle of the second, you don't want running back 22 numbers for 4 weeks. You want running back 1 numbers each week, maybe not having a good week here and there. And so realistically, he just does not have enough opportunity, and not just the run game, but in the pass catching game. If you doubled his stat totals from last year, we still would only have running back 13. And that's putting him up to just under 300 rushing attempts, just under 30 passing targets, and doubling his touchdowns. We're still not getting Cam Akers at his current ADP, and you don't want to waste these picks. They are very important. Skipping Cam Akers, you can get someone like Najee Harris, who could be a possible top number 1 running back, depending on what you see from him. But I do think that even he has a better chance of finishing as the running back 1 over Cam Akers this year. And then guys like J.K. Dobbins are there too, and it's possible that Austin Eckler falls to you. And realistically, I like DeAndre Swift a lot more than Cam Akers this year, and he's going at running back 17 right now, and should be seeing a lot more pass catching work as well as a sizable chunk of rushing attempts. So that is the running backs that I am telling you guys to avoid at their current ADPs. This is not a hit piece on any of these guys' talents. I think all 4 of them are incredibly talented. Some of the better running backs in the NFL at the moment. But it's not just me that thinks they're so talented. The rest of the fantasy community does too. And too many people think that they're amazing. And it's just not going to allow them to fall to you unless you're in some kind of homer league and you get really lucky. So make sure to stay away from these guys, and then make sure to tune in to any of the other episodes that you guys see pop up on this channel. I know that Mike had just done some of his off-season trade targets. The other night, we did a full podcast episode with one of our Listener League champions. So make sure to tune in for that and check that out. Make sure to check out our Discord link that's going to be in our episode description. There we do have a community of people where they like to talk fantasy football, NFL news in general, make your fantasy leagues, find some more people for them. Or if you guys just want to talk anything from UFC, sports betting, fishing, the works. It's just a great community to be in and be a part of. Again, make sure to like, subscribe, and turn those post notifications on so you're not missing any of these videos. Thank you so much, guys, and have a great day.